read you the story of Ruby Bridges. And I want to work on inferring. So they talk a lot about what Ruby is like in here. They tell us a lot about her character. And so we're going to use what they tell us to infer. Whoa, that didn't come out right. We're going to infer some things about Ruby and see what we think about her. So this is the story of Ruby Bridges. So, Ruby Bridges was born in a small cabin near Tylertown, Mississippi. We were very poor, very, very poor, Ruby said. My daddy worked picking crops. We just barely got by. There were times when we didn't have much to eat. The people who owned the land were bringing in machines to pick the crops, so my daddy lost his job, and that's when we had to move. I remember us leaving. I was 4, I think. In 1957, the family moved to New Orleans. Ruby's father became a janitor. Her mother took care of the children during the day. After they were tucked in bed, Ruby's mother went to work scrubbing floors in a bank. Every Sunday, the family went to church. We wanted our children to be near God's Spirit, Ruby's mother said. We wanted them to start feeling close to Him from the very start. So, since we know they're going to church and they want to be very close to God, we know they're very faithful people, and they're also hardworking because, right, her mom takes care of them all day and then works all night, so they're very hardworking people. So, at that time, black children and white children went to separate schools in New Orleans. The black children were not able to receive the same education as the white children. It wasn't fair, and it was against the nation's law. In 1960, a judge ordered 4 black girls to go to 2 white elementary schools. 3 of the girls were sent to McDonough. 16-year-old Ruby Bridges was sent to 1st grade in the William Franz Elementary School. Or 6-year-old, I'm sorry. Ruby's parents were proud that their daughter had been chosen to take part in an important event in American history. They went to church. We sat there and prayed to God, Ruby's mother said, that we'd all be strong and we'd have courage and we'd get through any trouble. And Ruby would be a good girl and she'd hold her head up high and be a credit to her own people and a credit to all the American people. We prayed long and we prayed hard. So if you just think about what they just said, praying long and praying hard before Ruby goes to the school, and you look at her dad, what can you guys infer about how they're feeling about this? So turn and talk to a partner about what you guys think.
Tired because of all the working.
Oh, okay, bring this back to me. So who would like to share what they thought? Yes.
I thought that they would be a little nervous.
Yeah, they look really nervous, huh? That was perfect, thank you. And so now remember that the mom said she wants Ruby to hold her head up high because it's about to get difficult. So, on Ruby's first day, a large crowd of angry white people gathered outside the France Elementary School. The people carried signs that said they didn't want black children in a white school. People called Ruby names. Some wanted to hurt her. The city and state police did not help Ruby. The President of the United States ordered federal marshals to walk with Ruby into the school building. The marshals carried guns. Every day for weeks that turned into months, Ruby experienced that kind of school day. She walked to the France school surrounded by marshals wearing a clean dress and a bow in her hair and carrying her lunch pail. Ruby walked slowly for the first few blocks. As Ruby approached the school, she saw a crowd of people marching up and down the street. Men and women and children shouted at her. They pushed toward her. The marshals kept them from Ruby by threatening to arrest them. Ruby would hurry through the crowd and not say a word. So if you were Ruby running through this, how would you feel? Somebody can raise their hand. How would you feel with these people? Yes.
I would feel lonely, scared, and not safe.
Exactly. Would you guys feel the same way? Yeah, so I want you to think about how Ruby deals with it and if she has the same response to it as you would. The white people in the neighborhood would not send their children to school. When Ruby got inside the building, she was all alone except for her teacher, Mrs. Henry. There were no other children to keep Ruby company, to play with and learn with, to eat lunch with. Every day, Ruby went into the classroom with a big smile on her face, ready to get down to the business of learning. She was polite and she worked well at her desk, Mrs. Henry said. She enjoyed her time there. She didn't seem nervous or anxious or irritable or scared. She seemed as normal and relaxed as any child I've ever taught. So Ruby began learning how to read and write in an empty classroom, an empty building. So would you guys have felt the same way as Ruby? Would you walk into the building with a smile, ready to learn after what those people have just done to you?
No.
No. So be thinking about what that means about Ruby's character, what we're learning about her. Sometimes I look at her and wonder how she did it, Mrs. Henry, said Mrs. Henry. How she went by those mobs and sat here all by herself and yet seemed so relaxed and comfortable. Mrs. Henry would question Ruby in order to find out if the girl was really nervous and afraid, even though she seemed so calm and confident. But Ruby kept saying she was doing fine. The teacher decided to wait and see if Ruby would keep on being so relaxed and hopeful, or if she'd gradually begin to wear down, or even decide that she no longer wanted to be in school. So Ruby's still keeping her head up, just like her mom told her to at the very beginning, despite everything she's gone through. Then one morning, something happened. Mrs. Henry stood by a window in her classroom as she usually did, watching Ruby walk toward the school. Suddenly, Ruby stopped. Right in front of the mob of howling and screaming people, she stood there facing all those men and women. She seemed to be talking to them. Mrs. Henry saw Ruby's lips moving and wondered what Ruby could be saying. The crowd seemed ready to kill her. The marshals were frightened. They tried to persuade Ruby to move along. They tried to hurry her into the school, but Ruby wouldn't budge. Then Ruby stopped talking and walked into the school. When she went into the classroom, Mrs. Henry asked her what happened. Mrs. Henry told Ruby that she'd been watching and that she was surprised when Ruby stopped and talked with the people in the mob. Ruby became irritated. I didn't stop and talk with them, she said. Ruby, I saw you talking, Mrs. Henry said. I saw your lips moving. I wasn't talking, said Ruby. I was praying. I was praying for them. So, is that what you guys would do? Would you guys pray for these people who were acting like they wanted to kill you? Yes? So what do we think that says about Ruby's character? So turn and talk to your partner.
She's very scary. She doesn't care. She messes up.
So raise your hand. What did you guys think? I heard a lot of really good adjectives. Is somebody else? All of those two, no? Okay. Yeah, back here.
She's kind-hearted.
Ooh, kind-hearted, that's a good one, huh? Because even though these people are really mean to her, she still cares about them.
She's very brave.
Brave, she's super brave. I wouldn't be able to be that brave, so. Yes.
She doesn't care what other people, say about her. She wants to be, friends with them if they want.
Perfect, thank you. Okay, one more.
She's very self-confident and has a lot of positive potential.
Perfect, thank you. Okay. Every morning, Ruby had stopped a few blocks away from school to say a prayer for the people who hated her. This morning, she forgot until she was already in the middle of the angry mob. When school was over for the day, Ruby hurried through the mob as usual. After she walked a few blocks and the crowd was behind her, Ruby said the prayer she repeated twice a day, before and after school. Please God, try to forgive those people, because even if they say those bad things, they don't know what they're doing, so you could forgive them. Just like you did those folks a long time ago when they said terrible things about you. Okay? So, when I hear the prayer that Ruby said, I think that she's very, very forgiving. So, even when these people are horrible to her and don't want her in the school, she's still able to forgive them. So, my main point is, did the author have to tell us that Ruby's brave and that Ruby's forgiving? Did he have to outright say that?
No.
We had to infer it, huh? We had to just realize that that's what he was saying, right? So this is something that you guys can do every time you read, because the author's never just gonna flat out say it, or not always. Yes.
Well, he didn't flat out say that she was brave, but you can just tell from her actions that she was brave and she believed in herself. She didn't care what people said.
Do you guys remember the vocab word that is, instead of inferencing, do you remember the vocab word that is? It's not direct characterization, where the author comes out and tells us it's something else. Do you remember what it is?
Explicit inferring?
No? No? Jacob, you say it.
Indirect.
Indirect characterization. Do you remember what the acronym was that went with indirect characterization? It's called the STEEL method. So do you remember what the acronym for STEEL stands for? We get to know a character by what they say, think,
act,
S-T, what's the E? Their effect on others. What's the A? Actions. And then the S is say, what they say. Oh, oh yeah, you're right. L, sorry. Yes, what their looks are. So that is indirect characterization. We didn't have to figure out that she was brave or anything like that. We learned it based on indirect characterization.
All right.
Good.
That's what I had, yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.